Welcome to Business Beyond Borders, the go-to podcast for CPA firms seeking transformative insights. I'm your host, Laurence Whittam, and with each episode we'll uncover key insights, best practices, and invaluable resources tailored for CPAs. From trending strategies to diving deep into outsourcing and offshoring, our experts will help in all areas of your business. Hey everybody, and welcome back to Business Beyond Borders. So we've got a very cool episode today with Andrew Garvey, who I met reasonably recently. I know you're in a new position, and it's also, but you've been around accountants for quite a number of years, right? So now we've also got a couple of funny accents, so hopefully everybody can understand us both. I know we can understand each other, but hopefully everybody can understand us fine today. So, and I know that you've had a background with the ICAEW as well, right? So more from that's similar to the AICPA, but on the UK side of things. Now, can you share a little bit just so that everybody knows who you are, what your background is, and then maybe a bit about BeFree as well, from what you're doing now?
Yeah, of course. So, as you say, I'm Andrew Garvey. I've been working with accountants probably about 15 years. Before that, I was a lawyer. So law was just too exciting, so I had to move into accountancy. Started my career at ICAEW, working with a lot of sort of mid-sized accountancy firms on their training. Also worked with a few of the big four as part of that role, and did that for 4 years. Moved into to join a software company, a cloud accounting software company called Free Agent. I was the second sales hire there. Ended up running a team of 23 people. Went through an IPO. And then eventually the business got acquired by one of the big banks in the UK and out west. And then having worked in a startup, decided to take the plunge and join the founding team of a company called Counting App. Did 4 years, raised 15 million quid of venture capital. So I've done 8 years in startups, which is, it takes its toll on you. Having done that, I've got the opportunity to go and work for one of the giant software companies in the UK, Iris, who also got a fairly big footprint now in North America as well. Did 2.5 years and decided that startup life was probably more for me. Startups and scale-ups was where I like. I took the plunge just after Christmas to resign from Iris, set up my own consultancy, VIA, and I'm now working with one of my first clients is BeFree. And BeFree are one of the largest outsourcers probably in the world when it comes to finance and accounting. Huge presence in Australia, increasingly big presence in the UK, and I think a fast-growing presence now in the US, North America as well. So it's been really interesting to work with them. Great bunch. We've done a few events. Actually delivered a talk at the House of Commons and the House of Lords last week for them in my, I think, second or third week. So they definitely throw you into the deep end. But no, it's great to work with them. They've got I think over 2,000 people working across the company, working with some really good firms of accountants, very, very quality led, which I think is important. Well, I'm sure we'll come on to that. Very quality led. And yeah, it's just great to start meeting people and talking about BeFree.
So no, that's awesome, and it's cool to hear somebody in a similar sort of like similar-ish background, right? And really has worked with accountants for a number of years, like myself, and again, I've then gone the consulting route on a very similar time frame as well. Like I think you were a few months after me, but that was about it. So it's very, very cool the sort of direction that you're going in as well, and I think it complements very well to what I'm doing. So now can you tell me a bit about the model, right? I mean, you've worked with multiple outsourcing firms as well, right? So what's the difference from a BeFree approach, right? As to what you've seen currently compared to others in the market?
I think that's a great question. Obviously, it's really important to me then the partners I choose to work with, quality is a big issue, and the way that they approach the accounting space is really important to me. But one of the big drivers for me about becoming a bit more independent was that the software companies, the outsourcers I partner with, really are solving a problem and are putting the accountants and their clients first. So the model that we use at BeFree is the model that kind of most resonates with me, if I'm being honest, is the extended team model, where you've got a dedicated resource. Okay, that's not uncommon, but I think what is uncommon, and when I was doing my sort of due diligence on BeFree, what struck me was the people working within BeFree see themselves very much as part of the accountancy firm's team as well. So you've got people in two teams. BeFree do a fantastic job of looking after the team over in India. But I think what's really important is they really work to make sure that the people working for the accountancy firms feel as if they're working for that firm. So I think if I could sum it up in 2 words, can't do it in 1 word. I'm not that eloquent, but extended team. You're becoming a partner of BeFree, and the person that's working with you really does see themselves as part of your team as well.
Now, and you've seen it from the firm side as well. Again, I'm sure that, this was a few years ago that you were with the ICAEW, but you were working hands-on with some of these mid and larger firms, right? So I'm sure that even 10 years ago, a lot of them were dabbling in this to some extent. Some of them were already established in this area as well when it comes to building extended teams offshore. Some of them have obviously done it themselves, right, to some extent, some of the larger ones. But a lot of them have been helped along the way and or partnered up with a chartered accounting firm, partnered up with an outsourcing entity. And a lot of these larger firms are still using traditional BPOs as well and KPOs. So can you maybe share like some of the major issues that you saw and problems that you saw firms facing when it came to this?
Yeah, I think fundamentally communication is the biggest issue I've seen. Where projects have worked really well is where the managing partner or the director that's sponsoring the adoption of outsourcing doesn't just go off on a tangent and go, yeah, we're going to do this and sign a contract. And then all of a sudden, 3 to 6 months in, the project hasn't worked because the work isn't being transferred from the team over to the outsourcing partner. Where it works best is where those senior people, those decision makers in the business, are bringing in some of the people who've actually got to be responsible for transferring the work over and explaining, right, here's the model, here's why we're doing this. There's always a bit of fear from some of the people within these firms that if they start handing out work, they're somehow jeopardizing their role. Most of the time, that isn't the case. Most of the projects I've seen firms trying to implement, where they've tried to implement outsourcing, is because the firm wants to grow more quickly. They can't actually hire quickly enough to keep up with demand from their clients, right? They've got a team there that are excellent at managing the client relationship. They want to free them up a little bit from the sort of the accountancy and bookkeeping tasks or the accounts production tasks or tasks to actually allow them to build those client relationships to drive the growth of that firm. And that's sometimes not communicated. Where that is communicated, the team within these firms get really excited because they can say, actually, the bit of the job I love is working with my clients to improve their businesses, to build those relationships, to actually become a genuine business advisor. Where they fail is where there's not enough transparency, not enough communication. And that works. Yeah, I'm spouting off a little bit here, Laurence, because it's something I'm quite passionate about, but it works both ways as well. Where it works is where, yes, the accountancy firm has to see the outsourcing partner as part of the team, but also make the effort to make the outsourcing partner's team feel part of your team. It's something we spend a lot of time on at BeFree, trying to sort of remove that barrier. It's a kind of artificial barrier. If I'm sending work to someone, I need to have a relationship with those people as well. And that's, I think, where I've seen great success is, right, okay, we're partners. That person's doing the work for me. Let's get to know them. Let's onboard them correctly. Let's do all that good stuff. Not keep them at arm's length. And I think if you try and keep a partner at arm's length, it's not really a partnership, would be my contention.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those, and it's definitely a big fear and somewhat the fear of the unknown, especially when you move further down a firm, right? From managers down to just staff members, people coming on. And it's, if I'm having to release this work, does that put me in jeopardy to some extent? And that's sort of why, I mean, I put a lot of focus with partners on, you've got to understand and make sure it's very clear to everybody the why you're doing this, right? What is the result? And in a CPA, and again, we've all heard it and we've seen it in a lot of these tech companies and stuff like that. They'll do it and they'll do it from a replacement perspective of people and because of those cost savings, but they're in a very different model and structure than the CPA firm and the CA firm. It's really the reason for doing it is generally because they physically can't hire enough people, right? The people that they have, they understand that now they want more of a work-life balance. They don't want to work 60, 80-hour work weeks during the busy seasons, right? So they need to have an alternate option, right, at the end of the day. And then it's also like, is there cost side of it, yes. I mean, the cost side of it helps because we've also drove up salaries as well. We want to be more competitive in that market. We get a big push from the AICPA and other associations saying we need to raise the salary cap as well from even the entry level positions. In order to do that, you need to make money somewhere. So it's either you raise prices, which a lot of firms are doing anyway, right? But then it's also, okay, if you're able to lower that cost as well on the other side, now you've got a bigger gap what you can work with, right? And you can generally increase that quicker, right? And from a bottom line perspective, by reducing the cost compared to necessarily just raising the prices, right? Because you have to justify that. You have to wait till the end of the contracts a lot of the time, and you got to figure out ways. So it is that fear of the unknown, right, for a lot of people. So, and now can we dig into a little bit of what you were saying with like the earlier on, we were talking about a bit about onboarding, right? And how important that is. And I've seen it as well. So whereas it's not standardized in a lot of cases, it's very personalized training on the job in a lot of cases with a lot of firms. Can you share maybe the challenges that you've seen from the onboarding perspective with firms?
Yeah, I think for me, the challenge is if you bring anybody new into your business, whether it's through an outsourcing partner or you hire someone into the business, the first step I would always take, depending on whatever role you're hiring in for, is take a step back and think, what does that person need to understand and know in order to be able to do that role successfully, and break it down into components. And I've worked, one of the startups I was at, we're counting up, which was a few jobs ago when I was part of the founding team. We hired quite a lot of people during COVID. I think about 20 people during COVID. So we were all remote. We broke down into a Trello board, number of cards. If this person joins the development team, they need to know these things. They need to have access to these tools. They need to understand so standard operating procedures for these things. And that worked really well, because what we did was we shared that Trello board. We shared it with the person. They knew what they needed to know. And I'm going down the old known unknowns and unknown knowns, all that kind of thing now, but they actually knew where the gaps were, because they could see, no one's told me about the standard operating procedure for that bit. So I can now go and speak to my contact and actually fix it. And I think with outsourcing, you have to look at new people joining your team as being new hires. And it's really important to onboard them. Anybody you bring into an accountancy firm needs to understand the work. Technically, they need to understand how to do the job, and that's a given, right? If you're hiring someone who's technically qualified in accountancy, they should know how to do the job. What they might not know is, how do they do the job in the way that your firm likes to do it, and how do they find the resources they need within your firm, and who do they need to speak to deliver that job successfully? So increasingly, I think it's about treating. It comes back to partnership and communication. You can't expect someone to hit the ground running unless you really invest in that onboarding process. And Laurence, I'm sure you've seen the same thing. Those first 3 to 6 months of an outsourcing partnership, or even an onboarding a new hire, are critical, because that sets the tone, and it sets the tone from the point of view of the accountant and the firm there, and the outsourcer or the new hire. So I don't think you can ever over-index on onboarding with new people in your business.
Yeah, and to add there, I think for those listening that are potentially, that you could be a partner, you could be a director, you could be a great manager that is great at training somebody, great at onboarding, but you've got to think about it firm wide, because there's also a lot of partners, a lot of directors that don't know how to onboard as well, right? They don't onboard and train the same way as you do, right? So it's those people that need to actually, even though I feel like when I talk to them, they're like, no, but we've got a set system. We're able to make it work, right? They're able to build a team. They're able to bring people on well, retain them. But there's a lot of people in the firm that can't do it as well, right? So you need to standardize the process that you're doing so that it can be shared at the end of the day, not just for, like you said, the offshoring side or the BPO side, but also for just current employees coming on, not under you personally. Right. But it's where you've got to step back and make sure that it is being standardized, because otherwise you're going to have a few that do it really well, and then the majority don't. Right. Because they're not necessarily trained on how to do that onboarding side of things. So it's out of the scope of what they're used to doing in a lot of cases.
I agree. And I think increasingly, recruitment and retention, 90% of that is done at onboarding stage, right? If you recruit, you invest all this time in choosing an outsourcing partner or hiring someone into your team. and then you don't get the onboarding right, then that first impression by that employee or that new joiner or that outsourcing partner is it sets the wrong tone. The relationship gets off on the wrong foot. And equally, even if you get over those hurdles and get people to productivity, retention wise, people still always have that memory in their head, which is this wasn't slick when I joined. And I think it's okay. And so, if you've got someone like I've joined multiple startups, part of the appeal is to join that kind of chaotic environment where you can help shape it. Right? I've no doubt that's important. That's important for me. I like to shape things. But for lots of people, they're choosing an employer or they're choosing a partner because they want structure. They want to do their job as quick. They want to be up to speed with being able to do their job as quickly as possible. And you've got to help them with it. And I think retention. We're seeing. I think in the US and in the UK, it's not just recruitment that's an issue. It's retention, right? People will move now. People will vote with their feet. And generationally, as we, I'm an old Gen X, and but as you look at sort of the millennials, the Gen Zs, they won't hang around if they haven't got an environment that's conducive. And I also think that's where I think outsourcing and technology have a massive role to play in retention of different generations. They want to focus on certain types of work. If the view of being an accountant for lots of the graduates to go into that space is that they want to be business advisors. They want to be advising their clients as to how they can better run their business. They almost want to be a consultant, like a management consultant. So the kind of the compliance piece, the back office work, that's not as interesting for the kind of higher flying graduates as it used to be. So I think for me, getting that onboarding right, having a good balance of outsourcing the kind of the more technical work, the compliance work, I think it's going to set you up for success. It means you're going to hire the right type of people to go and win clients and retain clients as well.
So, and going along similar lines of the communication aspect, but something you mentioned earlier, specifically, you said them versus us, right? So, and bringing it to more of that top level partnership perspective, right? I mean, you are essentially bringing in a partner firm to help you at the end of the day. And that's where I try and get this across with a lot of the partners in the US is that when you are looking at outsourcing, offshoring, you really, really need to look at the BPO or the KPO as a partner of yours, right? You need them at a seat at the table to ensure that they're listening, they're able to help with any type of problems that are coming up, right? But what have you seen from that perspective, right? What are some ways that firms can really embrace that partnership compared to what they're currently doing?
Yeah, so silos kill businesses generally, even if it's internal silos, let alone outsourcing silos. So the seamless you can make that the more seamless you can make that relationship, the better. And it's kind of little things, right? I think if you obviously there's a geographical difference usually between the firm and the outsourcing partner. But hold video drinks evenings, or have socials via Teams, but include people from the outsourcing partner in your team events and your team meetings. I think that's really important. Giving the outsourcing partner the opportunity to see a little bit about your culture is really important. I've seen lots of firms that I've worked with in the past have sent people over to the outsourcer for visits and getting to know the individuals in person. I think if that really helps, okay, it's a bit of a commitment to maybe fly 8-9 hours, but actually once you've met the team there, it's important. Other simple things. If you've got an outsourcing partner where you've got 5, 6, 7 resources, send them over a couple of logos or posters with your logo on that they can have around their desk, so they feel part of your business's culture. And I've seen all of this happen, by the way. This isn't sort of me being in sort of cloud cuckoo land and in some kind of utopia. It happens, and it's great to see it when you see videos. You see Christmas parties happening where there's teams and outsourcing partners who are got the logo of their big their biggest client behind them, and it just makes it more seamless. So as with any relationship, you've got to invest a little bit in it, but also make the outsourcing partners staff feel part of your culture. They're going to be part of their own company's culture, of course they are. That's the nature of it. But if you can bring them into your culture, simple things. If you've got a fantasy football competition going on, make sure they're part of those kind of things. Those softer, the quiz nights, invites, all that kind of stuff. That softest, and I think we spoke about it earlier. It's the softer skills that are the most important bit for building a relationship with an outsourcer. Everybody focuses in on, okay, how do I get the work to the outsourcer? Is the quality going to be there? All of these sort of hard technical points. And actually, it's the softer bit. How am I going to communicate with the people working for me at that outsourcer? How are we going to make them feel part of something in the other direction? That is the bit that I think makes it turns a sort of functional relationship into a really strong partnership. And that's where I think the investment needs to be, probably from both sides as well, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and I would say that it's, again, having spent so much time in India and travel, right? I understand, and talking to so many firms, it's not everybody over here wants to travel over there necessarily, right? Understandably. But when I sit and I talk to some of the partners, I'm surprised with the reaction when I say, okay, well, I mean, would you be interested in going up there? They say yes. It's like some of them will be like, yeah, I would be interested in going, like to see what it's like and stuff, whether it's India, whether it's the Philippines, it doesn't really matter. I mean, you'd be surprised how many people actually put their hand up and say, yeah, I'd be interested in going if I got the opportunity to. But vice versa, you've got 99% of the staff offshore would probably put their hands up and say, yeah, I'm happy to come here, right? So making that investment to do so will help with the culture. If people really don't want to travel offshore, okay, bring them in, right? And it may take a bit longer with visas and things like that. There's a bit of more complicated in some places, but having those types of things in place drastically help. But also making sure you implement, like you said, the fantasy football type things. And you're saying fantasy football from a fantasy soccer side over here now. I've got used to those terms. But fantasy football over here from the American side as well. But also then incorporating a fantasy cricket or something, because what's going to happen is now you're actually helping them open up to you and helping them educate you on things about their culture. A lot of cases where they're going to feel more open, right? You don't want to force your culture on somebody else in that sense. So you want to be very open to these opportunities and think about it that way. You mentioned providing the swag bag type things, right? I mean, yeah, give your logos, put your stuff on things. And generally the providers that you're working with in a lot of cases. Now, there's different size providers that can do certain things, right? But they will be able to, for a fraction of the cost you're probably spending domestically here to put those together, you can give your team member every single same thing that you're providing, get it done over there, though. It's probably more cost effective to do so over there. But now everybody's on the same page. They're the exact same onboarding from that perspective. So I completely agree with all those elements. So now, is there anything creative around that out of interest that you've really seen that firms have maybe done, whether it's from a larger firm doing it to even a mid-sized firm, smaller firm? But is there anything creative that you've seen them maybe doing?
Yeah, well, one thing that jumps out at me, I worked with a fairly large firm in the UK previously, and they had a lot of people working in an outsourcing partner for them. And the outsourcing partner put together a video that was shown at the partner conference, and there were sort of, I don't know, 40, 50 partners in this room in Spain. And actually, it sort of showed the scale of how many people were involved with working for this firm over in India. And again, there were logos in the background. It kind of illustrated, the scale of the outsourcing partner, which I don't think people get often, just how big some of these outsourcing partners, the offices are, and how many people work there, and how many people you might have working for you as part of outsourcing partners. So the scale was good. They also gave a little bit of an insight into those partners that these are the people that are working for your business, right? They're part of your team, and it was actually quite sort of. I think a few of them found it quite emotional because these are people they've worked with, and just the impact it's had both ways. So that was great, and to see this sort of outsourcing team, the outsourced team, get their moment in the sun, if you like, at a very senior event. That was great. I loved that, and it was good to be part of that day. To be honest.
Cool. Now, and as we start to wrap up, right, can you share, do you have any sort of tips or top tips from your side of things that you would just want to really get across in terms of outside of what we just spoke about with the communication and things, but anything that, whether a firm is just getting started or whether a firm is exploring, a firm could be doing it and maybe not having the best success doing it, right? What is one of those key aspects that they can focus on that would be very advantageous to look into?
Well, there's two things, I think. One is to be open. I think to actually, I think the outsourcing has changed a lot over the last 5 years. I think there's misconceptions perhaps 10 years ago. I think the world of outsourcing is exponentially different. If you've explored it previously, it's entirely different. If you looked at it 5, 10 years ago, what you're seeing now is entirely different. So I think at the outset, go into it more open-minded and just be adaptable and actually, come up with a really firm project plan. This is what we're looking for from an outsourcing partner. Here's how we're going to onboard. Here's what we want. Here's what we can offer. Obviously, it always feels a little bit of imbalance that obviously the outsourcing partner is the person doing the selling, right? We get that. That's fine. But from the firm's point of view, to the people that they're hiring by the outsourcer, here's what we're going to offer to you. Here's the onboarding process, and actually give a bit of thought about once this starts, how do we have that onboarding process for the external people, if you like, for the outsourcers, but also how are we going to onboard our team, and how do we align those two things? Because there's no point having a great process agreed at the director level with the outsourcing partner when you haven't mirrored that process with your own team, and then you see, where I've seen these, and I have seen projects fail. There's no doubt I've seen 3-month trials fail because the tasks and work doesn't get referred, and mainly that's because the process isn't made clear, or the fact that this is something that's really strategically critical to the firm hasn't been made clear to the UK or US staff. You've got to make it clear this has to work. We want you to do this. Here's why we want you to do it. Here's how you do it. And we need to make it work. And that disconnect, just make sure it's like any kind of team, any kind of mission you've got to take people with you. And I think that's important. If you just tell people you must do this, you're not going to engage them in the right way. Bring your team with you. Be open. This is what we're doing. Here's how we're going to achieve this together. So take your team with you would be my one piece of advice.
Yeah, and with that, I 100% agree with that. Right, it's a huge factor of this is the why we're doing it. Right now, help them with the how as well, because it's an extremely education heavy community that we're working with at the end of the day. Right, accountants are very they're professionals. They want to learn. They want to know how to do it. They're slightly more risk adverse than other professionals as well. So they want to make sure they understand what they're getting into before they necessarily do it. So it's not just about, you need to show them a path, right? You need to show them what the result is going to be, what challenges they're going to have, right? And try and remove a lot of those risks for them so that they understand. And the big thing is education and understanding. So have the conversations, right? And it's the people that they're going to learn from in a lot of cases, there's the Andrews of the world, there's the Laurences of the world, right? But there's only few of us, right? But then a lot of the providers are there to help, right? As long as, we said earlier, you treat them like a partner and you bring them to the table to educate, right? Then they will in some cases, right? You may find some aren't ready to do that, right? But there are a lot of providers that are in the place where they can educate on that, and they've been through the problems and the challenges that they can share, right?
100%. We've got hundreds of accountancy firms that we work with across multiple countries. This isn't a new thing for us, right? At BeFree, we know the route that needs to be taken. I'm a big, as I've said, I'm a big sports guy, and I coach soccer, use the US in football in the UK. And I've coached from under 7s up to under 16s. And it's important to have, it's not just good enough to say, kick a ball. You got to break it down into the mechanics, right? Break it down into the detail. That's what is, that's your job as, and if you're a director of a CA firm or a CPA firm, looking to integrate an outsourcer into your business, you have to give your team the detail. It's not, the goal is there, it's clear, we want to integrate it, but how do we get there? And those little steps in between, it's the detail that will change this from being something that, it could work okay to absolutely supercharging your firm. So you focus on those detailed steps that you want your team to take as well.
No, it's very, very cool, and very cool to hear you're a coach as well. So, because I did that for about 10 years too. So, over here in the US, coached for youth soccer for about 9 years or so. So let's. But as we wrap up, everybody, I hope you had a very good episode today. Andrew, where can people find you?
Yeah, so if you email me, you can find me on LinkedIn. It's Andrew Garvey. You'll see me there. That's probably one of the easiest ways to remember me. You can email me at andrew@befreelimited.com. But yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn. Always on there. Happy to connect with that. That's probably the easiest method.
Cool. Appreciate it, Andrew. All right, everybody. Well, we hope you have a a great next episode. Come join us for the next one, and we'll speak to you all later. Appreciate it. Thank you for tuning in to Business Beyond Borders. I'm Laurence Whittam, and it's been a pleasure bringing you impactful insights tailored for the modern CPA firm. Remember, the world of accounting is vast and ever evolving, and we're here to navigate it together. For more resources and episodes, don't forget to subscribe and reach out to our experts. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries of your business and explore the limitless possibilities beyond borders.